If you've ever been interested in designing and building your own speakers or subwoofers, well, there are lots of good videos and tools out there. In this video, I'm going to share my experience building this subwoofer. I'll go over the tools I used, some of the considerations I had to make, and the process for putting it all together. And I'll share some of the things that didn't go so well too. The basic components for a speaker or subwoofer are the driver, the enclosure, and sometimes a port, or the tube. To get sound out, or to drive the speaker, you need an amplifier. Subwoofers can either have the amp integrated into the enclosure, or it can be external, such as in a receiver. Beyond these components, you can add feet, which help isolate vibrations, maybe. Grill covers, which help protect the drivers from foreign objects, like my friend who thought the tweeter was a button and poked it, or other components. So how do we get started? All the decisions you make are interconnected in some way, but I think a good place to start is the driver. For myself, I have an 8-inch Polk Audio MW8002 driver that I pulled from the electronics recycling bin at my university. I've moved it with me 3 different houses now, so I figured it was finally time to use it. The next step involves something called the Thiel small parameters, or TS parameters. These are a set of numbers that give the electromechanical description of the driver. If you buy your drivers new, these values will often be listed by the manufacturer. Luckily, I was able to find my TS parameters online. From there, we can decide the cabinet size. The tool that I use is called WinISD. There are quite a few drivers preloaded into the software, but you can always add your own driver and input the TS parameters. There will be a link below to the resources I used to help you with that. With your driver input, you can create a new project. It'll ask what drivers you want to use and how many, and if you want a port or not. So do we want a port? My understanding is that adding a port creates a boomy sound at a lower power consumption. A sealed sub will produce a crispier sound but have a higher power draw. I would think this is because it's working harder to pull the diaphragm of the driver back in. So I decided to go for a port. Inputting all that into the software, it outputs the internal volume you need to achieve and the port diameter and length. The internal volume can be achieved by making a simple box, cubed or not, or you can make a cylinder. I don't know for certain how much the internal shape makes a difference. So now we have our driver, we know what size port we need, and we know roughly the volume of the cabinet. The last thing we need to determine is our amplifier solution. The amount of power in watts that your driver needs determines your amplifier requirements. If you're using an external amplifier, like with a receiver, you'll have to select a driver based on whatever it can handle. If you're buying an amplifier to attach to the subwoofer, again, that's determined by the power draw of the driver. I selected a 60-watt amplifier. I went ahead and ordered everything, hooked it up to test, and it sounds terrible. Yeah, this is where things get a little wacky. I tried a test tone at first, and there was a horrible buzzing sound. It was only then that I noticed the little part under the cone, called the spider, was not glued down in a few places.
Yep. Alright, right? I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be attached.
I did a sanity check with another driver I had to ensure it wasn't an issue with the amplifier, and yep, that sounds fine. Some people online have suggested before that this can be fixed by re-gluing the spider down. I tried that, hooked it back up, said the magic words.
Don't blow up.
But that didn't fix it. I played around with it for a bit, but ultimately I decided it was broken and not worth trying to fix. But I already had the amplifier and port, so now I had to get a new driver. I struggled to find something that seemed similar, so I ended up with this. the Dayton Audio SD215A-88. It has 2 coils, and I'm not sure why. But regardless, I hooked it up, and it seemed kind of quiet.
I mean, it's pretty quiet. A lot of that rattling is just hitting the table.
I tried a few songs, and while it looks like it's moving a lot in the clips, it's just not getting very loud. I just don't think the amplifier was powerful enough for this driver. Ultimately, I decided to go with the spare one and to get a bigger amplifier for the driver I bought. If you're keeping track, I started this adventure with 2 drivers, the original Polk Audio one and this spare Sony driver. I did all my calculations and ordered all the parts based off of the broken one before I knew it was broken. So then I bought a new driver to try to retrofit it to this amplifier solution and redid the calculations based on that. But now it seems like I didn't get a driver that my amplifier can handle, so now we have 2 drivers that aren't suitable. So now we're going with the spare. That means we have to redo the calculations, right? Well, I couldn't find the TS parameters for that driver because it came out of an already built subwoofer. Yeah, this came from the Sony SSWS74 subwoofer, another find from the university recycle bin. 2 houses ago, I decided I wasn't using it and I would take it apart to save space. So that makes this graph even sillier. I decided therefore I would just replicate the dimensions of the original cabinet and bring us back to square one. Amazing. With that figured out, I got some MDF board and cut it into 6 panels. I didn't get much footage of that process because I was working with my dad and he is vehemently against technology and the internet, and I didn't want to pause every few minutes to get footage. But here's the result of that. Oh, also, I decided against putting in a port in case I got the math wrong. The holes are pretty rough and there were tiny nails sticking out here and there, but it's mostly fine. I did a dry fit and test run, and yes, it actually works.
Alright, and go. Holy sh... that's loud. Oh. It's got some lungs. Royalty-free dubstep. Alright. That's respectable for this size. Cool.
Then it got the sanding, priming, and painting treatment that somehow ended up breaking my orbital sander.
Whoops.
And the paint job ended up a little drippy. But darn it, I've been trudging through problem after problem. I'm just ready to do a final assembly. So let's do it.
Here we go. %50 volume. Okay. A little bit of rattling. Well, the box is moving. It does make the sounds.
And there we have it. It took me longer than I'd like to admit, but it's complete. Here are the main things that I learned. The driver's TS parameters are the thing that determines the rest of your components. Test any component you have before you commit to it. Triple and quadruple check your part is correct before ordering it. And my woodworking skills could use improvement. The point of this whole process was to learn what it takes to make a speaker, practice making it, and figure out the errors so I know better for next time. Also, this is my first time documenting a project, and there's a whole lot I've learned there too. So with that other driver and port I have, I'll probably make another more powerful subwoofer, and I'll share that process. But I'll probably work on some other projects before then. I hope this was helpful to someone, even as a what not to do.
It's really important that you use audiophile grade screws. You have to use an audiophile grade screwdriver when you're driving them in. That's very important. It's very important that you use an audiophile drill when you drill the pilot holes. Oh, Jesus Christ. How many times am I going to do that?